Have you ever noticed how the kindest people often suffer the most, while those who lie, manipulate, and exploit rise to power, wealth, and influence? This isn't coincidence. It's design. By the end of this journey, you'll understand why your goodness may be holding you back, and how to navigate a world that rewards darkness without becoming what you despise. If you've ever watched someone cruel succeed where you failed, write, "I've seen this," in the comments. Your story matters. The pattern you've witnessed isn't imaginary. We live in the shadow of a painful truth. Our moral instincts were not designed for this world. The virtues you were taught to cultivate may be the very chains that bind you. Your honesty leaves you vulnerable to those who lie. Your compassion makes you prey for those who feel none. Your loyalty becomes the weapon others use against you. Friedrich Nietzsche saw this contradiction with unflinching clarity. In a world of predators, he observed, the moral person is not the highest type, but the most endangered. He challenged us to face what we pretend not to see, that conventional morality serves power structures, not truth. That our celebrated virtues often mask fear, not courage. His concept of master morality versus slave morality illuminates why the ruthless succeed. Master morality values strength, boldness, and self-affirmation. Slave morality rewards compliance, humility, and self-sacrifice. Our culture praises the latter while rewarding the former. We tell children to share while billionaires hoard. We preach honesty while liars become presidents. This dissonance creates souls divided against themselves, taught to be good in a system that punishes goodness. Is it any wonder we feel perpetually confused, resentful, betrayed? The first reason evil prospers is simple. The fearless take what the fearful will not claim. While you calculate risks, they seize opportunities. While you wait for permission, they create facts. Notice how dictators rarely overthink. Corrupt CEOs don't agonize over ethics. Manipulators don't second-guess their instincts. Their moral simplicity gives them tactical advantage over your complexity. Your capacity for shame becomes their weapon. Your need for validation becomes their leverage. Your desire for harmony becomes the very silence that enables their conquest. When you shrink from conflict, you surrender the field to those who relish it. When you avoid judgment, you abandon power to those who judge mercilessly. The second reason flows naturally. In human systems, appearance trumps reality. The confident liar outperforms the hesitant truth-teller. Style defeats substance. Certainty conquers nuance. Watch how often we elect the most confident rather than the most competent. How we follow the loudest voice rather than the wisest counsel. This isn't superficiality. It's efficiency. Humans lack the cognitive resources to evaluate everything deeply. We rely on shortcuts. Confidence signals competence. Volume implies certainty. Those without moral restraint exploit this ruthlessly. They speak with unwavering conviction while your conscience forces you to acknowledge complexity, nuance, doubt. You're thoughtful. "I'm not sure," wilts before they're emphatic. "I know." You're careful. "It depends," crumbles against their absolute. "It is." Their simplicity is more persuasive than your accuracy. The third reason cuts deeper still. We unconsciously reward those who confirm our delusions. The cruel leader who promises simple solutions to complex problems speaks to our desperate need for certainty. The manipulator who tells us what we want to hear activates pleasure centers in our brains. The exploiter who validates our prejudices feels like an ally. Meanwhile, truth-tellers who challenge our comfortable narratives become threats to our psychological stability. We reject them not because they're wrong, but because they're disruptive. This explains why prophets are stoned, whistleblowers ostracized, and ethical voices marginalized. The crowd doesn't want enlightenment. It wants affirmation. It rewards those who provide it. The fourth reason exposes our collective hypocrisy. We claim to value integrity while structurally incentivizing its opposite. Look closely at any organization. What behaviors actually advance careers? Is it speaking truth to power, or telling power what it wants to hear? Is it ethical consistency, or tactical flexibility? Is it moral courage, or team loyalty? The gap between stated values and reward systems creates moral theaters where everyone performs virtue while practicing expedience. The truly principled become naive outliers. Those willing to bend rules, ignore abuses, and compromise principles for practical reasons rise steadily. They understand the unwritten code. Appearance of virtue matters. Its substance complicates success. The sociopath intuitively grasps this contradiction and exploits it without reservation. They wear values like costumes, discarding them when no one's watching. Their moral flexibility becomes competitive advantage. The fifth reason reveals nature's cold indifference. Evolution rewards effective strategies, not moral ones. The capacity to deceive, manipulate, and exploit others conferred survival advantages throughout human history. Our brains evolved in environments where resources were scarce and competition fierce. Those who could charm allies, intimidate rivals, and bend truth had greater access to food, mates, protection. This created a natural selection pressure favoring skilled manipulators, individuals whose brains could navigate social landscapes not through honesty, but through effective deception. Studies show psychopaths possess enhanced abilities to detect vulnerability, mimicking emotions they don't feel. Their brain structures differ in regions governing empathy, allowing exploitation without remorse. These traits, destructive to communities but advantageous to individuals, persist because they work. Natural selection has no moral compass. It preserves what prevails, not what benefits the whole. The sixth reason is perhaps most troubling. Goodness itself becomes weakness when universally expected but selectively practiced. Your moral consistency becomes predictable. Predictability can be weaponized. When you always tell the truth, manipulators know exactly when to lie. When you always keep promises, exploiters know exactly when to break theirs. Your virtue becomes their strategic intelligence. This creates a tragic paradox. The most principled are often the most vulnerable to those without principles. The person who cannot conceive of certain betrayals cannot defend against them. The serpent succeeds because the bird cannot imagine being swallowed. As an ancient proverb notes, your moral imagination has boundaries. The manipulator's does not. This explains why good people seem blindsided by betrayal, why ethical organizations fall to corruption, why decent societies sometimes elect monsters. We cannot defend against what we cannot imagine. But here lies the crucial turn in our understanding. Nietzsche wasn't advocating immorality. He was demanding a higher, more honest morality, one that acknowledges these realities instead of denying them. The path forward isn't abandoning principles. It's developing what he called intellectual conscience, the courage to see reality clearly without comforting illusions or inherited assumptions. True strength begins with removing the blinders of conventional morality, seeing the world as it is, not as children's stories portrayed it, understanding the rules of the game as actually played. Only then can you navigate with authentic integrity rather than naive vulnerability. Only then can goodness become strategic rather than sacrificial. This transformation requires confronting painful questions. Are your values truly yours, or inherited without examination? Do you practice goodness from strength or from fear? Are your principles life-affirming choices, or protective shells against responsibility? Does your morality expand your power or diminish it? Does it serve life or retreat from it? Nietzsche challenges us to develop a will to power, not domination over others, but mastery over ourselves. The capacity to create values rather than merely accept them. This self-overcoming requires recognizing how often our goodness masks weakness, resentment, or fear of our own potential. How moral certainty can become refuge from the harder path of creating meaning. When you subscribe to this channel, you're choosing the red pill, the willingness to see uncomfortable truths that conventional wisdom obscures, to question what others accept, to grow where others stagnate. Consider how differently you might navigate relationships once you understand these dynamics. How seeing manipulation clearly diminishes its power over you. How recognizing false virtue inoculates against its appeal. Watch what happens when you stop being predictably exploitable. When your goodness springs from strength rather than conditioning. When your morality becomes strategic rather than reflexive. Notice how exploiters retreat when confronted with conscious integrity. How manipulators lose power when their tactics become transparent. How darkness recedes when faced without fear or denial. The world doesn't simply reward evil, it rewards effectiveness. The challenge is making goodness effective, not just symbolic. Making integrity strategic, not just principled. This requires developing what Nietzsche called the suspicious eye, the capacity to detect deception without becoming paranoid, to recognize patterns of exploitation without becoming cynical. It means cultivating moral intelligence rather than moral rigidity, understanding that sometimes compassion requires boundaries, that kindness without discernment becomes self-destruction. Perhaps most importantly, it demands embracing the discomfort of moral complexity, rejecting both naive idealism and cynical resignation, finding the narrow path between blindness and bitterness. In the silence of your most honest moments, you felt this truth stirring. You've sensed the patterns we've explored. You've questioned why virtue seems punished while vice prospers. That questioning isn't cynicism. It's the beginning of wisdom. The first step toward a more powerful form of goodness, one that can actually prevail in the world as it exists. One must still have chaos within oneself to give birth to a dancing star, Nietzsche wrote. The chaos of discarded illusions. The dance of creating new values from their ashes. Your power begins where your naivety ends. Not in surrendering goodness, but in transforming it from a vulnerability into a force. Not in becoming what you despise, but in becoming what you truly are. The world doesn't reward evil. It rewards power, the power to see clearly, act decisively, and create fearlessly. Reclaim that power, and goodness itself becomes revolutionary.